G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm talking with Brad Giles of Evolution Partners, who's based in lovely Perth in Western Australia. And today we're going to be discussing onboarding of new team members. So thanks for your time, Brad.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Michael. Perth is lovely, by the way. I'll just throw that in there.
Yes, and as I said off air, my youngest son is moving there shortly, so I've certainly got to give it a plug. And I've been there a few times, and I do love Perth. So, lovely spot. Now, we this is the first time we've met, albeit virtually, and I came across you a few months ago on another podcast that a guy called Dominic Monkhurst does, which I'm an avid listener to. I think he does some great podcasts and some great learning. So appreciate that after reaching out that you're happy to do this podcast. I look forward for the chat about onboarding. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dom's a good guy. I've known him for quite a few years. I'd written a book and he'd read it and said, got to get you on. And here we are now, upgraded to yourself.
Yes, yeah. Well, you just never know where these things lead, do you? It's a small world at the end of the day. So on the topic of onboarding, so maybe just give us a bit of background to yourself and I guess the onboarding topic.
Sure. So I've been, my whole life, I've been a lover of business, and that's a pretty nerdy thing to say from that perspective, but just always been fascinated and got great energy from it. I've started probably 6 or 7 companies over the years in a variety of industries. Some have gone really well, some have not gone so well. And given all of that, probably 12, 13, 14 years ago, started getting into coaching and helping leaders. We typically work with businesses from 10 million to 300 million in revenue. Just for a little bit of context, there's a few of us over here in Perth coaches. And so with that context, I wrote a book going back 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, called Made to Thrive. And that was born of my experiences with CEOs where they didn't really know their job. Okay, so if they were a salesperson, they would go and spend a lot of their time doing sales work or helping the sales team, and then letting other parts of the business go. Or if they were engineering, they'd be more engineering. And so there was not really any prescriptive book that I could find that outlined how to be a great CEO. And so I couldn't find it. And so I guess I just documented my learnings over time, and that became that book. That essentially is 5 roles that a CEO's got to perform in order to achieve 5 great results. Those 5 roles being an ambassador, accountability, culture, strategy, and succession planning. Not in the sense of I want to pass it on to my kids, but succession planning in terms of achieving consistency, consistent revenue, consistent profit, that type of thing. So with all of that, launched that book. It was great. It came out literally months before COVID, and I had a tour planned of America and Europe, and it was all going to be bigger than Ben-Hur, and then COVID came in, right? And it upset everything. But as I'm applying these tools over the subsequent years, the one element was accountability. You've got to build systems around people that generate accountability. What came from that was a problem that we kept on seeing, that it's manifestly unfair to ask people to be accountable for something in their job if they don't understand how to succeed. And so there's this one tool in that first book, the Made to Thrive book is 25 tools, right? So there's this one tool in there whereby if you and I were role playing, we would say, tell me about this problem you have with an employee, and then you would explain it. And I'd say, so how capable are they of succeeding on a 1 to 10 scale? And you might say, oh, I'll give them a 7 or an 8. And then you might say, I might say then, how well do they understand how to succeed? I give them like a 4 or a 5. And then the third one being, how much do they want to succeed? And then you might give them a 7 or 8. So they've got the desire, they're capable, but they don't understand how to succeed. And that's creating misery and problems, and their leader is frustrated. So with all of that, that was the thing that I kept on experiencing with leaders. They didn't understand. And then again, there was no real highly prescriptive book on how to onboard people so that they understood. So very long answer, but that's the story as to how I got to write this book and do, 3 years of research and a large international research study to get it down to simple tools that people can use in this format.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, a bit of a journey, as you say, and I've certainly found as a business coach with businesses I've coached over many years that not many have an onboarding process as a starting point in place. So it's so very important, and no doubt, as you probably talked, there's a lot of businesses that waste a lot of money, time, and energy because they don't have one, right?
Yeah, mate. I mean, it's HR, and it seems like it's one of the most boring and frustrating parts of HR. And you know what? Like, I'm a busy manager. I don't have time. Like, if we hired well, then this person, they should already know what to do, and they'll get in and they'll go really well. That's the mindset of the people. And me to a degree, until I dug into it enough. But I wrote this book for leaders and entrepreneurs, not as a member of the HR faculty, if that makes sense. So it's very action oriented, and it's very much around, most people don't have in fact, I've got the stats because I did the research study. 83% of people have, of companies, have an onboarding process, 83% of 14 days or less. The problem is, and only 4% have a 90-day onboarding. The problem is that 30 days is the inflection point where the impact starts to happen. So you can imagine these two charts where 83%, the great populace, is doing things that it doesn't really matter if you do a 1-day or a 14-day process. Everything, all of the impact happens at 30 days onwards.
Yeah, interesting. So as far as the onboarding process, I gather then what you're sort of prescribing, for want of a better word, is a 90-day process. So what does that sort of, in summary, look like, if you like?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I come at this, yes, it's prescriptive, because I think that prescriptive helps, but the overlay is, this is an example of best practice, and it's the reader or the listener's job to figure out what best practice, how to interpret that best practice to make it work best in your organization. So I'll just give you that context.
Sure.
90 days is the model that I work with in the book, because you need enough time. And generally, we take the new candidate through, or the new hire through, 3 stages, which is understand in month 1, learn and apply in month 2, and then embed in month 3. Now, they're not spending 90 days, 8 hours a day doing onboarding. Let me be super clear about that. We want as minimal and high impact time as possible. But so the first month is really, it's where the manager is more of a teacher. The second month is where the manager is more of a mentor. And then in the third month, we switch to more of a leader as a coach. So more of a coaching relationship with that new hire to get them to own and be accountable for the things that they are. The tools, to your question specifically, we got 2 tools in the book. The first is what we call a job or a role scorecard. So that outlines what's the purpose of the role, what's the responsibilities or accountabilities, what are the key metrics, ideally 1 or 2 metrics for the person, and what are the competencies from a manager's perspective, from a technical and process perspective, and from a cultural perspective. Now, all of those things don't need to be bigger than Ben Hur. We want it to be on 1 page. The second tool is how do we get, because that's what success looks like at 90 days. The second tool then is how do we get that to work? So how do we get the new hire to understand all of those things through 13 weekly meetings, i.e. over 3 months?
Yeah, right. And I guess so at the end of that 3 months, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of whether that person is right for the role,
Yeah.
right person. And I guess the old saying, hire slow, fire fast, then sort of comes into play.
Yeah, look, that's a great pick. That's a great pickup, right? What I learned, like I interviewed lots of CEOs, and I did a survey with 1,100 CEOs and hiring managers around the world. And there was a lot of things I learned. One of the things that I learned through all of that is that people want to get to the end of onboarding and be confident that this person needs to stay or needs to go. It's that ambiguity in the middle that's the problem, where it's like, yeah, I don't really want to hire again. Like, that hiring process sucks, right? Like, I don't want to have to go back and do all of that stuff and waste all that time. This person's kind of good enough. We want it to be totally binary at the end, where we go, this person is definitely a successful fit, or they're definitely an unsuccessful fit. And so I use those phrases very intentionally, rather than what most people might say, which is a good fit or a bad fit, because the successful or unsuccessful fit, it means that the process has caused that person to fit or not fit.
Yep.
As opposed to when we say good fit, bad fit, they were a good fit or a bad fit in our minds before they were hired, like going back even in the recruitment. They were just a bad fit. There's no point spending any time at all on an onboarding process because they were a bad fit anyway. Like, if they're a bad fit, they're not going to work out. But what we want is to consistently bring in the right people. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you made the point before. I think too often business owners, managers see the hiring process as the start and finish, and it's sort of over to the employee. But if there's not an onboarding process, essentially they're set up to fail in many ways, aren't they?
Oh, they are. They are. I mean, having dived in again into this subject, there's so many people. You think it would be just small business, one might think, who don't have the resources for an onboarding process, but it was across the board. There was one person in particular I remember I met at a function, and they said they'd been with a major mining company who will remain unnamed, but let's just say you know who they are, and they're one of the top few. And they'd been there for, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks. They didn't know who they reported to. They didn't know their job description. They didn't know what they were supposed to do. They just kind of fell in. So, and that's what the data said as well, because when I split it up around the size of employees, e.g. 0 to 5 or 5 to 20, 20 to 50, to 100, the data was roughly split amongst all of them. And there was no correlation between the quality and the size of the organization. It was just a smattering. So people want to learn and understand how to succeed, and we just don't deliver it for them. Most companies, do a terrible job of onboarding. Okay. But here's the thing, there comes at a massive cost. Okay. A massive cost. There's this thing called onboarding debt. So imagine a person comes into your firm, and we don't really do it. We give them, an induction, we teach them some stuff, but then we let them go and figure it out themselves. They might understand 50, 60% of what needs to be done, but then there's this gap of misunderstanding, which is 40 to 50% of things that they don't understand. And so that's what I call onboarding debt. And that carries and permeates through the organization. So then we think you've got 5, 10, 20 people who have all got 40% misunderstanding or onboarding debt. All of that comes together to create expensive rework and problems and cultural challenges and everything. So understanding that the value that onboarding brings is so much more than the terrible cost that we feel it takes to do that work to help a new hire understand. And the only other thing I didn't mention there was retention, because there's a direct connection between the retention of a new hire, how long they stay, and how your attrition rate, and the quality of your onboarding process as well.
Yeah, interesting. And in that context, you've got some sort of data through your studies or not
100%.
necessarily? Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, mate, I spent way too much time in Power BI. I'll tell you that. But yeah, so it's a combination of my data from this research study that's equally validated through external studies with companies like LinkedIn or Glassdoor or a lot of those. So what I wanted to do was say, this is what I found in my study. If you don't believe me, that's okay. Here's one from LinkedIn, and it's within 5% of what I said.
Yeah,
Or
interesting.
here's one from, so I really did a lot of research in what are we finding out there, and then how can I bring it together so that we can translate that into two simple tools that business owners of any size really can use to be highly effective with massive results.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com.
And so I guess the upshot to that is really the time and money and energy invested in this up front can just save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and obviously larger companies probably millions.
Oh yeah.
It's probably scary the numbers if you try to quantify it, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to do. I mean, I very much wanted to make it a business case, okay, and not in the case of, like you might think about a large corporate, but a simple business case. And in order to do that, there needed to be the soft side, the cultural, but also the hard side. So I use an example of a company with a $30 million revenue in the book, and they saved, I think it was like $1.264 million by utilizing their an effective onboarding process. Now, $30 million revenue, if they're doing, let's say 5 to 10%, that's $1.5 million to $3 million in profit if all things are equal. Yep. So yeah, it's a lot of money for sure. But I want to pick up on something that you just said there in terms of time. What I'm prescribing specifically is a total of 15 hours from the new hire's direct report. Okay, so their manager, that is 13 weekly meetings, 1 hour per week, and then 2 hours before that to prepare it all. So it's meant to be digestible and not overwhelming, but with a massive upside.
Yeah, well, in anyone's language, that's a pretty good return on investment, I would think. So I think, like you say, it's a mindset, and it's probably, again, it's sort of coaching the managers and those involved of the onboarding would be part of it. Would that be fair to say?
Certainly the leader as a coach, the manager a coach is where we want to get to, right? No one wants to be micromanaged, and no one wants to be a micromanager. Okay, so we want to. A big part of our perspective and the perspective in the book is we want to get people where they're answering their own questions and we're helping them to grow because they own the role scorecard. Okay, so it's like a job description, you might have previously called it, but job descriptions are just too fluffy, right? They don't tell us why we should hire and fire this person with clarity. So when we get them to understand that job scorecard, when we get them to learn it through the onboarding process, we can switch to manager as a coach. Yes, and that's the intent again through those 3 stages in each of those 3 months.
Yeah. So you mentioned and you touched on a story with a client. So maybe just to wrap up, just another story around the onboarding and the impact that you've seen in a live situation.
Yeah. So it's been a bit of a journey for me, as I'd said earlier. And I started using this process with clients maybe 2015, around then. And so I got to see it from go to woe and everything that happened along. So there's a large company that I work with in Adelaide. Let's say they're $30 million. And they have rolled it out to everyone. And the retention, first of all, that they've seen that's come out of that has changed massively. They were at, I think they were at like 28% attrition each year, and that's gone down to about 14. And then just the engagement, I think, getting the new managers to understand and to work more as coaches has led to, significant sort of further impacts around their revenues and their profits. So yeah, it's, there's a few cases in the book as well, stories, a variety of different examples. In fact, there's another very quick one. There's a guy in Texas who was interviewed in the book. He didn't really have an onboarding process to say of. He built a 100-day onboarding process around this principle. And he said it used to take his new hires to get fully productive about 9 months. And now they're doing it in 100 days to be fully productive. It's not productive, right? That's fully productive, where they're consistently hitting the numbers week in, week out. So
yeah, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
and I think it's important for our listeners to understand. I mean, you mentioned some sort of larger companies in the context of small business owners that our listeners are predominantly, but what you're talking about in the onboarding can apply to any business, right? And the upside that it can provide.
Absolutely. I'm not an advocate for outsourcing onboarding to software, okay? Because there's software companies that want to sell you a solution which is going to be, you just drop it in there and it's all done. That's not what the new hire wants. The data says the new hire wants to spend time with their manager, to get to know them, to get to know how to succeed in the role. Okay. So what that means is that this is a relationship between the new hire and the manager. Whether you're in the smallest or the largest business in the world, it's the same principle. This is a human principle. So it doesn't matter your revenue or your employee count. Yeah,
that's a good point. So just, I could talk all day with you on this topic because I'm sort of very passionate about it as well. So unfortunately, we don't have all day. So I guess just to wrap things up, what's sort of one thing our listeners could do tomorrow to sort of get the ball rolling in this context? And also, I'd certainly recommend everybody grabbing a copy of your book as a starting point as well.
Yeah, so, it goes without saying, the book is Onboarded, How to Bring New Hires to the Point Where They Are Effective Faster. So there's 2 tools in there. I want to answer your question, but there's 2 tools in there. You can download them from our website as well. I think the first thing is, what's the quick and dirty beyond that? If you've got someone that you've hired, what is the line in the sand between when they get to 90 days and you exit, very importantly, your legal statutory probation, where their legal entitlements change? What's the line in the sand whereby you will say, I will keep them or I will fire them? Like, that's the one bit that, even if you don't buy the book or do anything else, so having clarity on that matters. And you might say, well, if they're a salesperson, they need to sell 100 widgets. Or if they're this person, they need to do that. But get super clear, ideally with numbers. This is why I would keep this person in 90 days' time or at the end of their probation. And this is why I would exit this person.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So, look, thanks a lot again, Brad. Hopefully the West Coast Eagles are on an upward trajectory. For those that don't follow Australian rules football, that's what I was referring to. And I'll certainly look you up, because no doubt with my son moving to Perth shortly, I'll be over there a few times. So I'll maybe catch up for a beer or a coffee, mate.
Lovely. Yeah, look, the thing is, when you're at the bottom of the ladder, the only way is up. So West Coast are definitely going to be heading upwards. There's no doubt.
It's all good. Okay, well, you take care, and thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.